Look closely. Most men think seduction is loud, obvious, direct. They imagine flirting is all about compliments, touching, or chasing attention. But real seduction rarely looks like seduction in the beginning. It looks like confusion, like emotional tension, like wondering why you suddenly can't stop thinking about someone who barely gave you certainty. And the dangerous part, most men never even realize it's happening while it's happening. Because women rarely seduce through force. They seduce through psychology, not always intentionally, sometimes instinctively, sometimes emotionally, sometimes without even understanding the effect they have on you. And if you don't understand these patterns, you slowly lose control of your emotions while believing you're falling in love. That's why some men become obsessed after one conversation, why they replay texts in their minds at 2 a.m., why they start abandoning their standards just to keep a woman interested. It wasn't magic. It was emotional conditioning. The first trick is inconsistency. At first, she gives you attention freely. Fast replies, warm energy, curiosity. You feel chosen. Then suddenly, she pulls back. Not completely. Just enough. Now your brain becomes addicted to regaining what you lost. You stop focusing on her behavior and start focusing on getting the feeling back. That's the trap. Human beings value what becomes unpredictable. Casinos use this. Social media uses this. And attraction works the same way. When affection becomes inconsistent, your brain releases more emotional tension trying to predict the reward. That's why men often become more attached after a woman becomes distant. Not because she became better, because uncertainty increased emotional addiction. And the sad part, many men mistake anxiety for love. A stoic man notices the difference. He understands this simple truth. Peace feels calm. Addiction feels urgent. The moment someone's attention controls your emotional state, you are no longer leading your life. You are reacting to theirs. The second trick is emotional mirroring. She studies you quietly. Your humor, your energy, your opinions, your emotional wounds. Then slowly, she reflects them back to you. Suddenly it feels like you've finally found someone who understands you. She laughs at the same things, agrees with your worldview, feels emotionally familiar. And familiarity creates trust faster than logic. This is why people bond quickly with those who resemble them emotionally. But here's the danger. Sometimes you're not connecting to who she truly is. You're connecting to your own reflection. And many men become emotionally attached before they've even seen the real person underneath. A strong man slows down emotionally. He doesn't get hypnotized by instant chemistry, because chemistry can be manufactured. Character cannot. The third trick is selective vulnerability. She tells you something painful, something personal, a story about betrayal, childhood pain, a toxic ex, and instantly your protective instincts activate. You feel special because she opened up to you. Now you start emotionally investing faster. You want to heal her, protect her, prove you're different. But emotional disclosure creates artificial closeness. Psychologists call this accelerated intimacy. When someone reveals emotional pain early, the brain interprets it as deep connection. But real intimacy is not built in one night. Real intimacy is built through consistency over time. A wise man understands this. He listens with compassion, without becoming emotionally captured. Because many men confuse sympathy with compatibility. The fourth trick is making you compete without saying it directly. She mentions other men casually. A coworker, a guy in her DMs, someone who approached her. Not always to make you jealous intentionally, but the effect is the same. Now you subconsciously feel pressure to prove your value. You start performing instead of connecting. You overthink your responses, your appearance, your status, your money. And the moment a man starts competing for validation, he loses emotional power, because now she becomes the judge, and he becomes the applicant. This is why emotionally disciplined men never panic around competition. They understand something most men don't. If someone truly values you, you won't need to constantly audition for your place in their life. The fifth trick is rewarding emotional obedience. Notice this carefully. Sometimes the more agreeable you become, the more affection you receive. When you challenge less, she becomes warmer. When you prioritize her more, she gives attention. When you sacrifice your standards, conflict disappears. Slowly, you begin shaping your personality around keeping her pleased. And without realizing it, you stop becoming yourself. This destroys attraction over time, because people may enjoy controlling energy temporarily, but they rarely respect it deeply. A stoic man never trades authenticity for approval. He understands that love without self-respect becomes emotional slavery. And once a man abandons himself for someone else, he secretly begins resenting them for it later. The sixth trick is emotional mystery. She never fully reveals how she feels. Just enough interest to keep you emotionally engaged. Just enough distance to keep you thinking. And your imagination fills the silence. You begin projecting fantasies onto her. Men often don't fall in love with reality. They fall in love with imagined potential. That's why mystery can feel intoxicating. The less certainty you have, the more your mind tries to complete the story. But Stoicism teaches something powerful. Clarity is peace. Confusion is not romance. If someone constantly keeps you emotionally unstable, that instability is not depth. It's emotional fog. And emotional fog makes weak men chase harder. The seventh trick is making you feel chosen after emotional struggle. This one is the most dangerous. First comes uncertainty, distance, mixed signals, emotional highs and lows. Then finally affection. Now the reward feels powerful because suffering preceded it. This creates emotional imprinting. The brain associates relief with love. That's why toxic relationships often feel more addictive than healthy ones. Healthy love feels safe. Toxic attachment feels intense. And many men grew up confusing intensity with value. But intensity is not proof of connection. Sometimes it's proof of emotional chaos. A powerful man learns to ask a different question. Not to, how strongly do I feel about her? But, how do I feel about myself around her? Do you feel calm, focused, respected, grounded? Or do you feel anxious, insecure, desperate, emotionally dependent? Because attraction should not cost your identity. And this is where most men fail. They become hypnotized by emotional stimulation. One moment of attention from her changes their entire mood. One delayed reply ruins their focus. One compliment becomes enough to control them for days. That is not power. That is emotional vulnerability without discipline. The Stoics warned about this thousands of years ago. Anything that controls your emotions controls you. Not women, not relationships, not love itself. Your lack of self-mastery. And the truth is, many women are not even consciously trying to manipulate men. Some behaviors are instinctive. Some are emotional defense mechanisms. Some come from insecurity. Some come from modern dating culture itself. But whether intentional or not, the effect on weak-minded men is still destructive. Because undisciplined men surrender too quickly. They reveal everything too fast. Become available too easily. Attach before observing. Chase before understanding. And then they wonder why they lose themselves emotionally. A grounded man moves differently. He watches patterns instead of promises. Energy instead of words. Consistency instead of temporary excitement. He does not worship beauty. He does not panic over attention. He does not abandon his mission for emotional validation. And ironically, that emotional stability is exactly what creates genuine attraction. Because strength is rare now. Calmness is rare. Patience is rare. Self-control is rare. Most people today are emotionally reactive, triggered by texts, attention, validation, loneliness. But the man who remains emotionally centered becomes impossible to manipulate. And this doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming aware. Aware of your emotional triggers. Aware of your loneliness. Aware of your need for validation. Because once you understand your emotional weaknesses, people lose the power to unconsciously control you through them. And maybe that's the real lesson here. The goal is not to fear women, not to hate attraction, not to avoid connection. The goal is to stop abandoning yourself inside it. Because the strongest man in the room is not the loudest one, not the richest one, not the most attractive one. It's the man who can feel emotion deeply, without becoming owned by it. The man who can love, without losing his standards. The man who can walk away from confusion instead of begging for clarity. The man who understands that attention is not love. Intensity is not connection. And desire is not always truth. Because once you master your emotions, seduction stops controlling you. And for the first time in your life, you start seeing people clearly instead of emotionally. That is power. Real power.